just a little bit about me. My name is Farahmand Komizi. I work for Redmond Tech. I'm a Microsoft technology architect at Redmond Tech. Redmond Tech, a little bit of the Redmond Tech is we work on Office 365, Azure, and we do a lot of work on cloud solutions. We do work on a lot of integration, migration, as well as a lot of work on Power Platform and governance around that. So I would like to, because we have not a lot of audience here, I think that gives us a little bit of the freedom to be able to go around and everyone introduce themselves and let me know what you want, what you're looking for at this presentation, and I will try to focus on that mostly. Shall we go around? So we start with you, Walter. Could you introduce yourself and let us know what you do and what you're looking for?
I'm Walter O'Hara. I work for the Army. I have a past experience with SharePoint up until version 2013. Then recently moved to another command where they had just finished a conversion from 2013 to Office 365. The conversion has not gone 100% like we thought, and there is a big move to a more dynamic data presentation for things like finance and risk management schedules and things like that. So I'm trying to learn as much as I can about the new Power Platform. I'm very excited about it. I have a very positive attitude about it because it's like opening up a brand new toolbox full of goodies. And I see the potential of it. I'm just trying to, drink through the fire hose right now. That's about where I am. So
thank you, Walter. Thank you. Brent.
Hello. My name is Brent Jackson. I'm a data analyst for Gardaworld Federal Services. I work at Gardaworld Federal Services. And this is a subject that's near and dear to me. We do a lot of work with SharePoint at my job, and I work with SharePoint, Power BI, Microsoft Access, but we're beginning to add Power Platform features to the applications we have. So this really jumped out at me as something I wanted to learn more about.
Thank you, Brett. Alexander? Okay, we can go to Elizabeth.
Hello, I am currently looking for a SharePoint administration job and trying to learn more about the rest of the O365 ecosystem that can help with migrations, process management, user experience, and the workflows and the Power Platform are really promising for solving those business problems. So looking forward to this.
Welcome. Yeah, please put your email contact so folks on the call can contact you for admin positions. Sure. Thanks. And also, if you can, let us know if InfoPath migrations is on your radar. If not, we'll focus less on InfoPath and more on the Power Platform.
Okay. A lot of companies that I've worked with haven't done much with InfoPath just because it was really kind of difficult and clunky when they were looking at it. I think with forms and some of the newer technologies in O365, it's a little easier for the end user. But I'd be curious to see, other people's experiences on that.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
All right, Yan, let's go with you.
Hi, my name is Ian McIntosh. I'm with a large defense contractor in Canada. And we're doing a migration from SharePoint 2010 to 2019 on-prem. And we're trying to, we're doing, of course, doing the migration of all of our InfoPath templates and associated data, and we're finding some issues getting into the newer environment. But I'm glad you mentioned that about InfoPath, and please don't don't cut it short on the InfoPath stuff, because it's not a smooth transition, that's for sure. We found lots of ways around it, but it seems like there's a lot of overhead to maintain the templates and their performance as they did in 2010 right into 2019. In the near future, we'll probably, there's been a lot of debate back and forth saying, well, why don't you just go right to 365? Well, unfortunately, with this defense data, there's security requirements that perhaps have not quite yet been met. Anyway, it's still being debated. It's not my backyard, so I'm not too concerned about that. But right now, it's just the migration into 2019. So when I saw the title of this one of my coworkers mentioned it, and it's just exactly what we're looking for. So myself, and there's another participant that's also on the line. That's one of my coworkers, and I think it's going to be fantastic. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Ian. We're going to shower you with InfoPath.
Awesome.
And Ian, if at the end the information that we provided here is not enough for you or what you're not looking for, feel free to contact me directly, and we can have a one-on-one session with each other, and then we can go through all the problems and issues that you're facing with migration, and I can share my experience with you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Wow. Laura?
Hi, my name is Laura Mattis. I work for a manufacturing organization. I'm definitely a SharePoint amateur, but our IT department's a little overburdened right now, and so I've become kind of I don't know, I've been learning about SharePoint to try to be able to update or modify or build out some simple things within our system. We have a mix of SharePoint 2013 and modern SharePoint. And so I've played around with customizing some simple forms in PowerApps, but I don't know anything about InfoPath, and we have quite a few, clunky would probably be a good word, older InfoPath forms that I would love to learn more about migrating.
Absolutely. Thanks. Navneen? Okay, we can go Chanel.
Oh, hi. Good evening,
Hi.
everyone. My name is Chanel Copeland, and I am a SharePoint administrator. I work for an organization that uses InfoPath quite frequently, but I wanted to get some information about what was the best way to, I guess, market or advocate for PowerApps so that I can move some of these InfoPath forms over. There's a lot of features that are not very useful. One that I'm using right now is the email notification where they have the form sent in the email. I don't particularly like that option, so I wanted to see what would be a better way to kind of transfer that in PowerApps. I do have some experience with PowerApps with, your basic forms using Power Automate to go with it as the workflow. But I'd like to see a little bit more about InfoPath and the email feature sending out notifications currently is what I'm working on. So if we could touch on that a little bit, it would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, one way, Chanel, to nudge them is that tell them that InfoPath is going to be sunset.
Yes,
Like
I've presented that. I'm going to keep nudging, but I want to give them a surefire way that PowerApps is going to be exactly what they need. So to seal the deal.
You're right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Saha? Okay, I think next person, TB, be right back. All right. Okay. Thanks everyone for introducing yourself. Again, this at any time you have any questions, feel free to cut me out and ask your question. The presentation here is going to be very short. I keep it very simple. I'm going to do a lot of demo and hands-on. And again, at any time, if you don't understand me, or if you can hear me, or you have questions, feel free to cut me out. So thanks for the introduction. The agenda here is, again, we're just going to briefly touch about the roadmap of InfoPath and SharePoint Designer, and then talk about a little bit of what alternative you have for both InfoPath and SharePoint Designer workflows, especially for 2010. And then talk about the differences between the InfoPath and PowerApps, and the same thing for SharePoint Designer workflows versus PowerAutomate. And then a little bit of the migration path. The migration path, we're going to just go overview of it because this itself requires another session for it. It's a huge discussion. And then we're going to spend a lot of time on demo and QA. Okay. So the roadmap, Microsoft recently announced that SharePoint Workflow 2010 retirement. So last year, November 1st, SharePoint Workflow 2010 turned off. They no longer be able to use it. And also for any new tenant that is being created, the SharePoint Workflow 2013, also for those newly tenants being turned off, there's a possibility that Microsoft going to turn off the SharePoint Workflow 2013 for SharePoint Online this year as well. For on-prem, the InfoPath and SharePoint workflows were going to be available to 2016. That's about the end of life of SharePoint 2016 version. After that, there's not going to be any support, and at some point you have to look into your migration path. So a little bit of what's available as an alternative to this InfoPath or SharePoint workflow. So these are the technology that I most popular out there, so that I picked, but I'm not going to talk a lot about them, but these are available to you. What I'm going to talk about is the PowerApps and PowerAutomate a lot. But if you're looking for not using PowerApps, here's your options. And if you're not willing to use PowerAutomate, and these are the options. There's a lot of them out there, so I just listed some of the most popular ones here. Is someone having any questions? I'm seeing animation here. Okay. So the difference between InfoPath and PowerApps, PowerApps is mobile friendly, so you can create applications for mobile that you can access it, versus InfoPath is not mobile friendly at all. And the other difference is PowerApps Designer is browse based. So as I mentioned here, is a SaaS application, and which means that any operating system you go into, you can create your PowerApps. You're not limited to Windows only. Just unlike the InfoPath, where you only have the Windows version of it. Although two things that I don't like about PowerApps is one. Yes, I said I don't like about PowerApps is there's no print friendly options in PowerApps. Like InfoPath, you could right click and print the form itself, but in PowerApps you don't have that options. It's something in the pipeline, in the roadmap of Microsoft to release it, but it's not available yet. And then the other thing is the licensing. Yes, every user requires a license to use PowerApps, including your external users. So this is one of the drawback here is that when you were using an InfoPath form in SharePoint Online, when you have external users, they didn't need a license for SharePoint, and then they could also use InfoPath without any license. But now if you're using PowerApps, your external users need a license, either through your tenant or through their own tenant. But what PowerApps shine is able to connect a lot more data source than what InfoPath has. It's over 220 connectors that you can connect to and leverage those connections and integrate multiple systems together. And we're going to go over all of this and the difference in the demo. SharePoint Designer versus Power Automate. Well, SharePoint Workflow again is free. You don't need to license it, but Power Automate requires a license. The license for Power Automate and PowerApps, it comes with your Office 365 Enterprise if you're using, or on a business site as well. The same thing for Power Automate. The IDE, the designer, is browser-based and is a SaaS platform. Power Automate integration with SharePoint is only in Modern and is only in SharePoint Online at this moment. And I'll show you if you want to use that with your SharePoint on-prem, how you can do that. But the integration is only in the SharePoint Online, but you can definitely leverage that and use it with your SharePoint on-prem as well. The same thing with Power Automate, that 220 plus connectors that I mentioned is also available for Power Automate. And the same thing, license is required for Power Automate to use for all users. So this is the last slide, and the migration path. So for you to migrate from workflow, SharePoint Designer workflows to Power Automate, or from InfoPath to PowerApps, first, one thing you need to do is that, get an inventory of all your workflows. Identify your potential pain points. What is the difference between PowerApps versus InfoPath, or SharePoint Designer versus Power Automate? What's the difference? Does it meet all your requirements? What you need to do, work around that, all that sort of stuff, which is we're gonna go through that a little bit, and I will share a link that from Microsoft that goes in the details of the difference between the SharePoint workflow versus Power Automate. After you identify that, whether you want to, is this something that IT wants to do it, or you want to coach and train your power users and have them do that. So that's the decision you need to make. And once that decision was made, then you can start rewriting it. At this moment, there is no straightforward migration path. There's no tool out there to my knowledge, that can migrate your SharePoint Designer workflows straight to the Power Automate, or your InfoPath straight to PowerApps. So it has to be created from ground up. Okay, so you have to build it from scratch. So that's it for the slides. We're gonna just go right into the demo. Before we go to do that, let me know if anyone has any questions.
Question.
Yes.
You can't, you were talking about existing templates would have to be redone in PowerApps. For example, any existing InfoPath templates we have would have to be, sorry, excuse me, I've got dinner going on. Would have to be completely scrapped and redone in PowerApps, correct?
Correct. Yeah, if you're trying to migrate it. So,
okay. How about the existing XML though? The records.
Yes, and good question. So in InfoPath you have two different forms. One that you do document library form, and then you have one for SharePoint List. So the question is that for the document library, when you have the form, it's submitted as XML document in your document library. So in order to view those information, it all resides into that XML file, which is only can be viewed with InfoPath. There are some tools out there that allows you to extract those data and migrate it to a SharePoint List. Wow. And then once you do that, then you can use in PowerApps and build your form.
Okay, so it sounds like you should be well prepared with some kind of an archive process or a method in mind.
Yeah,
because
so
with hundreds of thousands of records, I just don't see it being practical with, well, and that's, I haven't seen this third-party tool that will do that translation, but certainly you wouldn't be able to render that XML existing InfoPath file into a PowerApps interface.
no, so the third party tool, what it does is that it goes through all those XML file, retrieve the files, and then creates a SharePoint list out of it, right? So you basically coming from a document library InfoPath form to a SharePoint list.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. There was one question, a couple questions in the chat. Let me take a look at them. Yes, absolutely, Chanel. There is in PowerApps, I will show you that you have the options, what the screen size you want to choose, whether you want it to build for mobile or you want to build for tablet mode, which is you can select what type of screen you want to do. I'll go through that in a moment.
No, I'm sorry. I mistyped that. So I know that you can do it from mobile and tablet. Is there a way that you can do it outside of those two options? Can you build PowerApps like a regular screen versus mobile and tablet?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So there's a question here says, wanting to see what Office 365 can offer. We have, I believe that is Nintex Forms and Workflow on-prem and Azure Web Stacks. Okay. Okay, sure. I'll go through the demo and let me know if what you see answers your questions and see what you're looking for. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's just go through. I wanted to show you this article from, I highly suggest for everyone that doing the migration, especially in online for workflow, go through this document, this article right here. There's a short video introduction to that. This will talk about the differences and the pain points of migration and the difference between the SharePoint workflow versus Power Automate. Okay. So it would talk about all of those, what the options you have. Like, for example, if you're using impersonation, there's no impersonation in Power Automate, but there are some workaround, and I will go through that workaround for you. If you're using an approval process, there are some template out there that you can leverage in Power Automate here. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but take a look at it. The terminology that's been used between the SharePoint workflow and Power Automate. So for example, in Power Automate, they use trigger for starting options, how your workflow or flow needs to be started. So they use trigger options in there. So walk through this. I will provide the deck to you, share with you, and or CL can do that. And then the links over there, the useful links. And then the other thing that I talked to was regarding a scanner. The SharePoint modernization scanner is for SharePoint Online. If you have SharePoint on-prem, you need to use SharePoint Migration Assessment Tool to get a scan of all the workflows and InfoPath in your environment. And then for all the administrators that using SharePoint Online, if you want to enable InfoPath or disable it, this article will explain how you can do that. And this is the announcement from Microsoft regarding the SharePoint 2010 workflow retirement. All right, let's jump into the demo. I'm going to go over the PowerApps and Flow. So there's two ways you can get in there. So if you go to office.com, and I'm going to log in with my account here. So in office.com, you should see an icon that says Power Automate. And if you don't see it, you can click this all apps here to get that, to see all your apps. So there should be a Power Automate and Power Apps in there if you have license. And let's go through Power Apps first. And this will take us to Power Apps portal. And if you want to get there directly, this is the link, make.powerapps.com, and that will redirect you to Power Apps portal. We're going to focus on the Canvas app and then the integration of that with SharePoint. We're not going to focus on model-driven or portal that much. And then in this portal, you can see right away, you can start creating applications just clicking from the data that you want to work with, or you can just start from blank, that sort of stuff. In here in the left navigation, you see list of apps that you created, and you do have the options to create a new app here as well. And then in here, will list of applications that you created or someone shared with you, that you can see it here as well. So this is one way to play an app to get to it, and list all your apps. And here you can see change your views, and you can search for it if you have a long list for the any applications that you're looking for. And this will allows you to go again. This just like you see the home page is allows you to start creating from blank or from the data. Microsoft provides you a lot of templates. I highly suggest you, if you're starting building an app, start from a template that is very close to your requirements. Saves you a lot of time and efforts. In here, this is a bigger topic regarding the data. It's called CDS. Now they call it Dataverse. So it's a service that Microsoft introduced with PowerApps that allows you to, besides like other data sources like SharePoint, Excel, or any other services, you can store your data here. It gives you a lot of functionality, a lot of security around that, flexibility on that, but it does require you to have a premium license to use it. And also if you use the Dataverse or previously known as CDS, your user must have premium license as well that use it. I talk about leveraging PowerApps and Power Automate with your SharePoint on-prem, and that's through the gateways. You can, so you can, as you can see, I have a gateway. If I have an on-prem instance, I can use this gateway to access my on-prem instances like SharePoint, like SQL, or like other sources. So if I want to build an app that based on my data that resides on-prem, like SharePoint on-premise 2013 and 2016 or onward, I can create a data gateway, and that allows me to safely access the data from my on-prem and build applications on using those data. Okay. The connections I talked about, actually, I'm going to go here. So these are all the connectors that I was explaining. It's about 220 of connectors here. You can see if you're using ServiceNow for your ticketing system, you can access that. You can integrate that with your SharePoint. You can build an app in the SharePoint where a form that someone's, if they have they want to build, create a request or incidents, they can just go to the SharePoint and fill out the form, and that through your app and Power Automate, you can create a ticket in ServiceNow. So that's how you can integrate two different systems to one. A lot of people talk about that ServiceNow is a little tricky for them. They know how to do that. You can make that easier for them. So I'm not going to go through all this, but like for example, if you wanted to build an applications that sends an email and get asked for someone to sign in applications, you can use Adobe or DocuSigns here. These connectors allows you to do a lot of integration between different services. And it makes our administrator, the power users, it gives them ability and empower them to integrate without writing a single line of code. Of course, you can, if you don't see a list of connectors that you are interested or using a system that is not available here, you can create your own custom connectors, or you can ask your developers to do that. But know that the custom connectors requires a premium license. And you can see some of these connectors also says premium, so which is you do need the premium license to use them.
Your system administrators can lock down which one of those connections can be used or can't, right?
Absolutely. So I'll go through the administration of that as well a little bit.
Okay,
absolutely. I'm not going to go to chatbots and AI Builder. These are also requires a premium, but chatbots allows you to create bots and no code solution as well. And you can share that with your, you can create that and share it in Teams, and everyone can go and ask questions or anything like that, or in your SharePoint page. With AI Builder, you can there are many other modules here that you can leverage to, for example, there are a module that you can read a form and extract data out of it and save it to a data source like SharePoint, okay? But these two are requires premium licenses as well.
A question, you mentioned ServiceNow. How about BMC Remedy?
You can absolutely look in and search here. BMC. Unfortunately, BMC don't have a connector here. But if BMC provides APIs, REST APIs and all that, you can build your own custom connectors.
Okay, thank you.
Question about the models that you just went over. You said that you'd have the ability to take a, let's say, a Word document that is filled out as a form, and you can import that into SharePoint. Is that what you said? It was something similar to that.
It's similar to that. So let's say, let's take invoice, right? You send an invoice and you get a PDF, and you or receive a invoice as a PDF. This model, like extract, I think is form processing. Like this is a form, allows you to be able to, once you get that PDF, go through that PDF and extract the data and save it somewhere. Like how the amount, the company, the items, you have to train it, and once you train it, then you can do that.
So basically, you would have to let it know what fields you want to capture from that PDF and import into the SharePoint list. Exactly.
Yeah. So you just have to train that. There are some out of the box right here that has already been trained, like business card reader. You can build an app using this that was, you take a picture of the business card and it will extract the information and save it to any data source like SharePoint or SQL.
Okay. Thank you.
Solution here is a great way to control service. A solution, right? If you have multiple different flows and Power Automate flows and applications, you can build the solutions to control it. Like, and it makes it easier for ALM process application life cycle to move it from one environment to another environment. This allows you to be able to like Center of Excellence from Microsoft that's using solutions. There's a theming solutions from Microsoft allows you to build different theme for your users to use that with your PowerApps. This itself also requires another session, so I'm just something that you wanted to keep an eye and learn a little bit about it, because especially in the IT, this comes handy to build solutions and just share that with your users, so you can control the versioning and all that. And is in terms of lifecycle management, application lifecycle management, it makes it easier to move from one environment to another environment. So if you guys are familiar with DevOps, this helps. This solution helps you a lot. So let's go to SharePoint, the PowerApps Designer. So we're going to click on the Canvas app. So in here, you get presented with two options, which one you want to create with. You can use phone or tablet. I'll talk about the difference between them. If you use phone, your users can still open the app in the browser in the desktop, but it will be limited to like a screen. The screen size or your app size will be limited to the phone width and height. So you will see a lot of white spaces around there. Okay, so just be aware of that. But if you want to create a tablet, you can create a tablet, but your users can still use it in their phone, but everything is going to shrink to be fitting into your phone screen. Okay, so a lot of companies.
Question, I'm sorry about that. If you create it with the tablet, does it mean that their phone will have the reactive response, or will it just make it the font smaller?
It makes everything smaller. It shrinks everything.
Okay.
And I will talk about how you can build an applications that it can be responsive.
Okay.
So with that means that you can one applications for browser and desktop, and the same application can be used in phone. I'll talk about that a little bit. But we're just going to use tablet for now, and then I'll go through that responsive later. Okay. So hopefully I don't use demo one anywhere else. Okay, I have it. I did get questions regarding they have data. Oops, did I disconnect my? Sorry about that. Do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, now I can.
Okay, sorry about that. So let me get the Zoom meeting out of here because it's blocking my. They did questions regarding if you have Azure instances. In order to bring your Azure instances, your Azure APIs, or you have the web apps, you can use the custom connectors to bring that over and integrate it. Use PowerApps for that. So if you have, like for example, Azure Data Lake or Azure SQL, you can use these connectors here. Or if the connector is not available, you can always use custom connectors. Okay. So this is the PowerApps Designer, where you can build an applications, and then later on I'm going to go over the SharePoint PowerApps form. It's a little bit different than this. This is a standalone application, right? The other one is the SharePoint PowerApps form is integrated with SharePoint, and then I'll go through that with you. Second. So you do have some options regarding the theming here. You can choose your theme. And then in here, insert, you can insert any of these elements here, inputs, and you can leverage that. One thing in InfoPath, you had repeating table. In PowerApps, is called gallery. You can use gallery to show SharePoint list. You can use, if you have something that's repeating, you can use this to repeat that elements over and over, okay? And same thing with data tables. This is just like, looks like a Excel tables, like with the headers and like that. It's very similar looking to that. And then if you want to build the forms, this forms right here allows you to do that. So you can, if you want to display only, like not editing, you can use the display. Or if you want to build a new form or edit, you would use edit here. And then you get some media here as well. Recently, Microsoft announced that you can use maps, Bing Maps. You can bring maps here, or you can bring AR here, 3D models if you're working with that. But you can leverage other media here as well. Like you can, if you're building applications for a phone, let's say if you have remote workers that they go to the site and they need to take a picture and submit it, they can use the camera button here as well to do that. Or if you you can build an applications that you have barcodes right everywhere that they can scan the barcodes. For example, if you can create a barcode, they can scan it and they can time in for timesheet. You can do that. Or like you can create a barcode for meeting rooms and they can scan it and then that counts the number of people going to that meeting room. Right. So you can build those type of applications. These are all the medias available to you. In terms of charts, these are very these three are very basic charts. They're available to you. But if you want more powerful charts, you can bring your Power BI reports to here. You can use these, and you can embed your PowerApps report into your application. And then you get some icons here as well. There's a lot of them that you can leverage with you to style your application. And then we're going to go over to the inputs. I jumped over to the other side, but the inputs here, you get the buttons, text, and everything, drop down, combo box, and all that stuff, goodies. You can get the sliders, ratings, and timer here. And then if you're using forms, you can use that, but this requires you a pro version of it. All right, and Rich Editor as well. And this is recently announced. And you can add address input, and this will use Bing API to, when you're searching for an address, automatically suggest you address that just recently been announced. And then labels and HTML text here. So if you know a little bit of HTML, you wanted to add some styling, it's a little harder for you to use PowerApps to do that styling, you can use the HTML text as well. The label and button, and here. And then one thing in the difference between PowerApps and InfoPath is in InfoPath you get pages. In PowerApps you get screens. So you can build, add screens to jump from one screen to another screen. Okay, so you can do that here. So that's a difference between pages and InfoPath and PowerApps is that InfoPath uses screens and PowerApps uses screen and InfoPath uses pages. All right, so Chanel, you had questions regarding a screen. So I'm going to go through the settings available for you in PowerApps here.
Okay.
You can give it a little bit of icon, and then this you can choose the icon and the color for this. You can even bring your own icons to give it a little bit of customization to it. So if you look at that in here, you can see like I'm using different icon. So it gives a little bit of better presentation to users. What kind of applications is that? The screen size and orientation is here. So in the tablet mode, you can do two different orientations, so landscape and portrait. It comes with some of the predefined sizes here, but you can build your own custom. So you can say what width you want it to be and what height. So one thing I wanted to warn you here is that if you're using custom, and if someone else accessing your apps that using a screen that is in a lower resolution, they have to do a lot of scrolling, right? If you use higher width and higher height. So be aware of that, okay? If you want to do that. But with this is, you use that ratio and is not a lot of scrolling, okay? And then I'll go through the responsive applications, how you can build this responsive, which it works in all the screens.
Now, is this custom feature a part of the regular Office 365 suite subscription?
You mean the size?
Yes, this option here.
Yeah, no, this is regular.
Okay, all right.
I will call it out if it's a premium. I will call it out. So, and some options here that if you don't want, for example, they rotate the location, the orientation, you can lock it. So it's always in one rotation, orientation. It will always look it into that orientation. And and this is where I was talking about aspect ratio and a scale to fit. When you select a scale to fit, if they are using it in a smaller, if you go to the these predefined sizes, you use a scale to fit. If they are using a lower resolution, it will scale it down to fit this to fit to the display, okay, to the page, so they don't have to scroll down. But if you use a custom one, this probably will not work, okay? And the scale to fit also for mobile, it will shrink everything down to the screen of your mobile, okay? Some of the advanced setting here. One of the drawback here in PowerApps is that when you bring in your data from SharePoint, then you have this value right here presents that you can retrieve only the first 500 items. All right, you can increase that to 2,000, but you cannot increase it more than that. And there are workarounds. If you have SharePoint list items that are more than 2,000 items, you have some workaround. And what this means is that PowerApps, when it's calling the SharePoint to bring the data, it only can bring the first 2,000. And when you're doing filter or search for that, it only can search for the first 2,000. So there are some workaround for that, and I'll walk you through those workaround later. I'm not going to talk about all of this because there's a lot of them, but you can go through that and you can enable there's some good description around what are these options are. There's a lot of them here, but let me know if you have any questions regarding that. Other than that, I'll walk you through the collection and media and variables in a second when I'm building a very simple app here, okay?
This was very helpful, thank you.
No problem. And before I go build a simple app in there, I just wanted to show you how you can build a responsive applications. So I just went to the new app and I select the new app. It will take me to this screen here. And we want a blank app and we want a phone layout, okay? For responsive applications, you want to be a phone layout. And then in the phone layout, you can go to File, go to a Screen Size Rotation, and then you want it to be in the portrait, and then you want it to remove the scale to fit, okay? So means that it's not gonna shrink it to fit to the screen size. So what that means is that now you are responsible for how your applications, how the elements that you're adding here, what width in what sizes needs to be, right? Like if you're accessing it for mobile, you have to specify it. Like in mobile, this is the size that I want it to be. So you're responsible for that.
Okay.
The
Now,
PowerApps
is that the same if you use a template?
Yes, same template. Microsoft is releasing some container for responsive. It makes it easier. Mm-hmm. I will add a link to that if you want to use that. And also I will add a link to how you can use the traditional way of that. Okay. So Microsoft is bringing that responsive container. So they're adding a container. Right now is in a preview, so it's not released yet. But I will share the link that that you can go. It's a YouTube video that talks about that, and you can follow it. Okay. For responsive, that's a lot easier than
customizing it yourself, for sure.
Customizing yourself. So for example, exactly. So like if I have a label here, and if I wanted to make sure this label is always taking the whole width, right? Mm-hmm. So I add the label. In here you can see all the properties of that label, right? What you can do, color, background, all that stuff. And one of them is sizes. So I can go to the size here and in the width, I can click on the width here to take me to the formula bar. By the way, in PowerApps, everything is, you can use formula to customize anything. Most of the formulas is very similar to Excel formulas. All right. So one way you can access it is from the properties pane here, or from this section, this dropdown, you can access the properties of the elements that you just added, right? In this case, is a label, and you can see a lot of elements there. You can change all of them, and you can use formula to change them depending on different behavior. So what I'm interested in here is that I'm interested in the width. I can select the width, and I can remove that. And if I want the size of this label to be taking the entire width of my application, regardless of what size, what screen that I'm accessing from, then I can use parent dot. You can use dot to access a property of an object. So parent, we're talking about this whole thing right here, right? This whole screen right here is my parent. And then I want to access the width of that. So the parent is always looking to what the screen is being accessed, and at this moment it would tell me it's 640, but if I access it from desktop, it's probably going to be 1300 or something, right? And it will always respect that. So with this, if I'm accessing it from this one with the 1300 resolution, it will expand it to 1300. So this is what I'm saying, that you have to be responsible for it, what sizes to be. Okay, and you have to use a lot of formulas to get there.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So traditionally in InfoPath, we would say 100%. So with establishing a parent width of 640, how would you represent in formula 600?
So the parents, because I use a mobile layout in the IDE, is always going to show me the 640, the phone layout.
I understand the formula, the 640 is the default, but with that formula, how would I say I don't want it 100 or 100% or 640? I want it 600. You
can do you can just type in 600 if you want, but let's say if you want only, or you wanted just to take the 1/4 of your width, right? You can say parent width divided by 4. That would take always going to the 1/4 of your applications.
That's helpful. Yeah, so you can format everything to be quarter screens or thirds or halves.
Correct. And then let's say I have another label here, right? I want this label to be always after this label, right? To show this after, right? There's another thing right here, it's called position. So X and Y, where you want that elements to be located. So in this case, I want the location always starts from the 0, for example, and then the Y, I want it to be right below that, my label 1, right? I can just say label 1, right? And then dot Y. So I'm accessing the label 1 Y value, and then I'm saying that I'm gonna add that to label 1. I'm gonna get the height value as well. So now it's gonna be right beneath that with the formula, right? And I can also do the same thing. If I want it to be right beneath it, but it starts right from here, right? I can do the same thing with the X value, right? I can just do label 1 dot X plus label 1 dot width. See that takes me to that. So now you can see our label is a little bit off to the screen. So half of it will not be seen. So we can use the formula to fix that, right? We can say, well, we want it to be parent.width, but minus label 1 width. So now see that fits to our to screen.
Okay. And then you could, of course, just move it by the handles as well.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I mean, I could also just do label 2. I can access, I can even access its own property, right? I can say label 2 X, right? That's the same thing, like whatever the X value is minus the parent width that will get to. So I can do that as well.
Thank you.
So if you want to build a responsive, this is one way, but you can see it's a lot of work. So make sure you're up to the challenge if you want to do that. And be, when you're doing your estimates for your business, make sure you count for all this work, because it's a lot of work. One of the issue with this responsive is that, well, now they added it. Previously, when I was, so this is how you can play your app and see if it's working for you, right? It wasn't available previously. Previously, it was only showing them this, right? But now they added that. So because I removed that scale to fit, now they give me a ability to be able to play with it and test and debug the responsive of that. So this is one way to test your applications when you're building it, how it's working and all that stuff, okay? And this is an app checker here that they will tell you if there's any issue with your formulas or something. They is also tell you what you need to tuning to make your app better and work better for it. Okay, so this is one is a good feature here that you can check. Also, this is where you're gonna add data. So you can click on this icon right here, and then you can search here for example, if we want to add SharePoint, I'm going to search for SharePoint. I'm going to click on the SharePoint. This is a SharePoint connector. All right, and I'm going to select that. Because I have created a SharePoint connector before, I already created connections. But if you're doing it for the first time, you need to create a connection. By clicking this, you have to first create a connection. Okay, so I'm going to create a new connection again to show you how is it. Remember that I said you can access your on-prem data, so you can select here. Would you like to be connecting to the cloud, which is the SharePoint Online, or your on-premise data gateway? Okay, and you can do it from here. I don't have it on-premise right now, but if you set up your on-premise gateway, you can select it, and then from here you can pass on your information. Okay. But I don't have a SharePoint on-prem. I'm using cloud, so I'm just going to use a cloud and click connect, and that will create a connections for me. So this connection, what it will do is that it will allow the PowerApps to connect to the resources that is available to me. All right, I have a lot of SharePoint sites here. I can, if I don't find the SharePoint site that I'm looking for, I can just search for it, or I can type the URL here and then click connect. But I'm looking for my demo site here, and in here it will list all the document libraries and SharePoint list that I have in that site. Let's say I'm just going to use document library here because I don't have a SharePoint list. I'm just going to use the document library here, and I'm going to connect. So now I bring in my document library. If I wanted to list out all, I'm going to go back to here to switch to my tree view to see all my components. And in here, I'm going to go and click a gallery and add a vertical gallery here to bring my data that from my SharePoint site. Okay. So I'm going to select my gallery and click on the data source here, or I can just click on, go from here, I can click on items. Right now it's using a sample, but I'm interested in my document library. Okay. I don't know what I call it. I think it's called documents here. All right, so that brings my document library to here, but I need to specify what fields I wanted to have in there. Okay. And I can say I'm looking for name. I might not have title. I'm just going to use the name and when it was created. Okay, right here, you can say when it was created. And let's go and add something like the document library here, so we can get a little bit of items in there to show for better for the demo. I'm just going to go ahead and add a bunch of zip file here. So I went ahead and add that. So if I go back here, I can go and back to click here and right click to refresh the data. And here we go. Now we're getting all those items that I brought in and showing it in this gallery, okay? You can, if you wanted to show more, you can definitely do that. If you select your gallery, you can change the layout if you would like. If you don't like, for example, in our gallery, we select an image, but we don't have any image in there to show. So I'm just going to show title and subtitle. And in here in the title, I will have, instead of title, I'm going to use name because I don't have a title for that. So I'm bringing the title and that stuff here. And if you wanted to add more, you can definitely do that. So you just click on the gallery, you go inside of it, you select one of the element in there, and you go to insert. And if you want to add a label, if you want to add a text or anything, any of this, you can add it. So I'm going to add another label here. So we'll add it to my gallery. And that label right here, label 3, I can say, you know what, show me not modify by. I don't want to see modify by. Maybe I just want to see the status, right? Now it shows the status. And I can just move that around, so I can select this and make it a little bit bigger and select this and bring it down to show that exactly. So with one couple of the clicks, I brought my SharePoint document. You can do the same thing with the SharePoint list, my SharePoint document library, and brought it over to the PowerApps in here. So I'm showing my document library. I can build the forms right out of this. I can say, let me, if someone click in this icon right here, I wanted to take them a form to fill out the properties, or if this is a SharePoint list, to fill out the column, edit the forms and be able to submit it to the SharePoint, right? I can do that. So for that, I'm gonna just go add a blank screen. And then I'm going to add a form, and this I'm just going to use edit. And let's just do that. And in my form, I'm going to, for the data source, I'm going to select our documents, okay? And then this is very intelligent. It's going to bring all the data that I can make changes. So it doesn't bring all the columns that is not editable. It just brings the ones editable. But of course, you can always add them if you want. You can click when you're selecting your form in the properties panel. You can click on edit fields, and in here you can add any columns you want. I can bring created by if I want to, but those will be read only. So you can see I cannot edit them. And in here, you can make any changes you want to them. For example, this title is not in SharePoint. PowerApps always honors the source. So in SharePoint, this is not a required field, but I can make changes to that. I can make it required in my application. So I can select that. I can go to the property panel, and in here, I can say required. Before I do that, do you see an icon says is lock? I need to unlock it first. So I can click on advanced unlock. Now I can make the changes. You see now it's available. I can, to require, I can say true. So even though in SharePoint I said it's not required, but in my application, I can say this is a required field, okay? So if I have a button here, let's say add a button here and at the bottom, right? And we can change this text of button to submit. And for any elements that you want to take an action on it, the actions are always starts with on, right? So unselect what you want to do. So what this want to do? We want to submit a form, right? You can say submit form, and then what form you want to submit? Our form 1, right? And that will submit that form 1 to SharePoint and respects the source as well. So if I do that, let's play this, actually before we play that, we need to do one more thing. We need to know which form we are submitting, right? In the item here, we're gonna say if, so let's say in scenarios, this is a new form. We will need to tell them this is a new form, all right? Otherwise it wouldn't know, right? Oh, actually, sorry, that's somewhere else. In here, we need to tell them what source to look into. So we're gonna say gallery, right? Gallery 1. This is our list of items in here. And we're gonna access the properties and say selected. Oh, I lost it. Selected, all right? So that will tell me whichever items that's selected, we're gonna edit it. So if before we do that, let's go back to gallery, and in here was tell the users if clicking this arrow should take them to this screen and fill out the form. So we're going to select this arrow and we're going to say unselect of it. Navigate unselect of it. We're going to say edit the form and form 1. We want to edit the form and form 1, and plus we're going to separate the formulas with the semicolon, and we're going to say navigate to a screen 2. Okay, so now if we click that, it will take us to the form. Now watch, the title doesn't have any information. If I click submit, it will tell me that I need to fill this out before I can submit it. All right, now let's say we want it to be a new form, not edit form, right? We can add a button here, or we can even add an icon if you want. So let's use a plus sign right here. And we can, on this, again, on select of these, if I click on it, I want this formula happen. So we can say new form and form 1, and you guessed it, navigate to screen 2. Okay, so if I click that, it would take me to my form. Although we have to do some cleanup when we click in submit or we navigating away, we need to reset our form. So we haven't done that. That's why you see this says required. But now this is a new form. It's not an edit form anymore. Okay, and you see the created by and created and created by. They're read only because they're type of columns that you cannot make changes to it. Any questions so far?
Yeah, Farahmand, I have a question. Oftentimes we go to InfoPath because of the rich rules that you're able to create that, SharePoint list item form you would not be able to leverage. Where do you find the rules area in
Absolutely,
PowerApps?
great questions, right? So in InfoPath, you can add, let's go to the home page of it here. You have some roles right in here, and you can even add you can even add form when a form loading, you can preset some of the rules here to what happens when the form is loading. So in PowerApps is pretty much the same. So you can click on the app itself. Do you see there's an icon here that says app? This is when someone clicking your app and launching your applications, and what happens is that you do have some options here. So like when your application starts, right? What do you want it to happen? So that's equivalent of form load on InfoPath, right? So what you can specify your formula here. For example, I wanted to get current user, right? I wanted to get the current users and add it to the variable. Or for example, I wanted to make sure the current users that log in is part of a group. If it's not, I wanted to send them to a screen that it says you don't have access, right? You can do that. So you can, for example, in here I can say if user email, right, not equal, by the way, hold on, sorry, let's do this actually. Use not, right? Here you go, equals, I'm just gonna hard code right now. Then we're going to set a variable. So setting a variable, it means that this variable, you can use it throughout somewhere else. Like for example, you can set and define your variable, and then you can set what value need to be that variable, and you can change this variable within your functions in your app, within the rules and everything else. So in here I can set a variable that admin user, right? I can say admin user. If it's not that, then I want it to set to false, but if not, then I can set it to yes, right? True. So now let's close this. Let's see what's wrong with it. I'm having too many arguments here. I forgot to close this. So let's expand this, and I can format my formula so we can see it in a better way. So what I'm saying is that when the apps is loading, I wanted to check the current user, right? Current user. If it does not match this, or if I have a list, I can compare it in the list. If it doesn't match this, then it's not an admin user. If it's matching that, then it's an admin user, right? Then I can say, okay, if it's an admin user, I wanted to show this a screen. If it's not admin user, I don't want to show this a screen. I don't want to show this, for example, this gallery. I don't want them to see it, right? I can go to this gallery, right? And then there's a options called visible. I can click on the visible in here, and I can set that to that variable. I said admin user. So right now it says to false. If I can test that out just by right clicking on here and say run start to test it out. And let's set our text value here to our variable so we can see what this variable is called, admin user, and is false. And there's a reason, because this is case sensitive, so I can just do lower everything to lowercase, okay, and compare it that way. So we get rid of that sensitive, case sensitive. So if I right click and run start again, now you can see it's now showing it because it's true, it's matching. Okay, so that's a formula you can do. You can even do the formula within the item itself, right? In visible, if I don't want this to be visible to someone, right, I can just say, I can bring the same formula to here as well. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
No problem.
You were making mandatory fields in the form, but at the same time, if you're accessing the library in SharePoint, it wouldn't necessarily be mandatory there.
It wouldn't, yes. I was just pointing out that you can do that in there, but I highly suggest you to do it from the source itself, right? You go there to library settings, and you make that mandatory from here. So PowerApps is always honor the source, but you can override it in there. Overriding it there, it actually doesn't change it here. It means that if they access your PowerApps, they have to fill that out.
Yeah.
But
this is a gate to get into the back of the library.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I do want to get away from a designer here and show you the integration of the PowerApps here as well. And I'm not sure how much time we have, CL. Do we have time?
We have 10 minutes, but if anybody wants to stay longer, and if you could stay longer, Farahmand.
Absolutely, I can stay longer. Because I do want to go over Power Automate, because we spend a lot of time on PowerApps, and And if I don't address your need and your questions, I'll share the deck, which has my information. Feel free to contact me or contact CL, and he can share my information with you. And you can reach out to me, and then we can discuss regarding the items and questions that you have. Okay. In the integration that I was talking about for PowerApps and PowerAutomate in SharePoint Online, this is not yet available in on-prem. This integration, there's a talk that they might make it available for 2019. It's just a talk. I haven't seen anything yet. But in SharePoint Online, you can only access this integration in a modern experience. And in here, you can customize a SharePoint form. This is the same way for SharePoint List, so it doesn't matter. You can click on customize. This is a little bit different. I wanted to show you this. It's a little bit different than what I just went through here. This is a standalone app, but this is a SharePoint form. What it means that when your users go to the SharePoint, they click on new, or they're trying to edit, they're trying to add a new item, or they are trying to edit one, it opens the form within the SharePoint site, right? And then it doesn't move away from it. It is in the same site, in the same where, and they can click submit, and that's the integration. I'll show you a little bit of what that means. In here, I'm not gonna do a lot of customization here. So it's just gonna add a label here on the top, so we can see this is a PowerApps form, not a out of the box form. And they're gonna say PowerApps form. Okay, and then I'm gonna change the background to dark blue and the white color. And let's make this icon a little bit bigger. Let's make it 15, right? And we can make it bold. All right. One thing you can see the difference between the other one is instead of on top of app, we also get SharePoint integration component here. In here, gives you the ability what you wanted to do, what kind of rule you wanted, what kind of formula you wanted to run, what actions you want to run on any of these. So if someone's viewing it, what do you want to do, right? In this case, it's saying that I wanted to view the SharePoint form, right? And that would just be all read only. If they click on edit, right now by default it says editing the form. But if you wanted to add additional formula, you can do it. Like if you want to see if someone is, let's say if you want to make the title only available for certain users to make changes, you can do that, right? Just from here, you can say on edit, same formula that we use. I'm just going to go grab it from here. A little lazy to type in. Just going to go grab it from here. All right, so I can go and say here I select my title, right, and it's locked. So if I want to make changes, I have to go to the advanced section of the property and click on unlock. And then once I select the whole thing, whole data card, because they have some children in there, so some element in there. So I want to select the whole thing, and I go to display mode. And I will remove this display mode. I would say if admin user, right? I can bring the same formula here, so I don't have to write it twice, but I just want to demo it. You can do that over there as well. If admin users display mode wanted to be view or disabled, whichever you want, is the styling is a little different between them. Okay, I'm just going to go disabled, and then if not, then I want it to be edit. You can do that as well, right? This allows you to be flexible on what you want to do based on the user roles, right? And then these are the changes we made, and then just be aware of all these rules right here, what you want to do based on that. And then we're going to go and save our form and publish it. So if we go now to our SharePoint document library, and then I go and change the properties for this one, you can see our PowerApps form now is launching from the right side. You see it's a little bit different than what we have over there. And if I click edit, that brings that disabled that. I think I messed up on my formula because I'm the same user, but see that's disabled. So let's say I'm not the right, I'm not that user. It's disabled for me. I can't edit that, but I can edit other stuff right here. Okay. So this is the integration with the SharePoint. This is a SharePoint form. This is how it looks like. And one thing I wanted to let you know that if you want to have your own custom submit button, there is no way you can get rid of the buttons right here. You cannot hide it at this moment. And if you want to have your own custom button here to does, besides submitting the form, you want to do additional extra actions, like you wanted to submit the form, also sends it to different data source, like for example SQL. You have to come here and on the save button, just instead of saying submit button, change that to false. So if they click on that, it doesn't do anything. Or you can just do, you can tell your users, like you can say notify them, right, and say use the button in the form, for example. So so that way, if they click the save button there, they get a notification that on the top of the formula saying that use the button down below, because this doesn't do anything. So you want to make sure you overwrite these values here. Otherwise, if they click save, the form closes and goes away. Okay. And the same thing, you can click add a button here, and you can have your own formula. So let's say submit form. You can submit my form here, and that will basically it's the same thing as before. But if you want to add additional actions here, you can do that as well. And one other thing, you can also use formula here to pre-populate items here. Let's say this is, I wanted to the value of this to be of the current users. You can do that. So in here, if I select this data card value, which is this item right here in the property pane, I can click default. By default, it's going to bring whatever the data coming from the SharePoint. You can overwrite that as well. You can say if this data is blank, right? If the parent default is blank, you don't want to overwrite the previous, right? You don't want to do that. You can do that. If it's blank, then you can say user, current user, and full name, for example. If it's not blank, then you just want the default value. All right. So now you can see if it's blank, and I'm bringing my name here, my full name here. So then when I submit, it will submit that with that default value. You can also set this to disabled at any time display mode. You can set it to disable if you want. And so users cannot change that as well. You can do that as well with display mode. Any questions?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
You had mentioned that if you had it set up in such a way that you wanted to force somebody to use a button down below, and they go to press the save, the message box would come up and say use the button below, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so that functionality is available mobile as well? That is, a message box comes up?
In mobile, yes, the Notify is also available in the standalone applications. This is the integration with SharePoint. In the standalone, you have full control.
Right.
With the SharePoint integration, that those action bars here is you cannot hide it at this moment. There's a lot of user voice right in this, but this is the workaround you can do. So you
Well,
can override.
what I was getting at was the message box itself. When we're publishing from InfoPath as a web form, that functionality doesn't exist. So we've got to do all kinds of other workarounds to you know, if we're trying to force a certain formatting, we have to have a hidden box open up instead of a traditional alert message.
Yeah, this notify has been added recently. So right now I added this formula to this button to notify me, right? So if I go to the play, if I click that, you see that notification on the type comes and
Oh, it's
says,
up there. Okay.
yes. You can build your own notification if you want. This is new and I really like it because previously what I was doing is that I would add an icon here to build our pop-up message, right? So I would add an icon here, a rectangular icon here, would set it to fit the whole thing. And then I go to color of that and make it transparent or something like that. Maybe a little bit darker, right? And then I would add a label or something on top of it. Let's do that, and then would say we'll make the label background a little bit darker, and then white. Let's do our notification here.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. You said, how did you get to the transparency again?
Transparency, okay. I just added an icon, all right? And an icon here, and it was a rectangular.
Okay, I saw that part.
Yes, so I went added rectangular, this one, and then I increased it to take the whole screen. Then I went to the properties of fill. So this is the background color fill. And everything in here is use RGBA. You can use color here, but with RGBA, it has a parameter here that how transparent you want it to be. So if I use 1, you use that exact color. So it's the blue. But I can, so it's between the value from 0 to 1, right? Any number between 0 to 1. So 0 means that is full transparent. 0.1, we can see how now the colors comes back, right? So I just made it 4. Whatever you want to, is your preference, right? And then on top of that, I add a label.
Thank you.
No problem. And then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to select these two by holding the control and selecting those two, right click and group them. You can create group as well, just like InfoPath, right? And then in here, I'm going to say on the visible, actually on my button, I wanted to set a variable, right? I can set and show notification, right? And this part is on you, whatever you want to put, whatever makes sense to you. Show notification, and I'm going to set it to true. And I'm going to use this show notification for my group. I'm going to select my group and go to the visible and set the visible to show notification. Now, if I click on this button, this notification will show up, right? And you can, that's another way to show a notification. If you don't want to use the one out of the box that comes on top, you can use your own custom one. You can build it better than me. This is just to show you a demo.
No, that's great. So you're still able to engage with the button at the bottom, despite the group layer on top?
Yes, and then of course you want to build something and to hide it, because that way the user cannot do anything, right? You can add a icon like this on top and change the color to something is more visible, and make sure you select the icon and you go to the properties and select unselected, and you want it to revert your variable. Show notification to false. So that will hide
Okay.
that
So
notification.
kill that whole group, yeah.
Yes, so if I click
Awesome.
that now, that goes away. And you want to also hide that button too. So this is, and this one, you want to select and then group them. Now, we select our group and we wanted to select visible again to show notification. So that button doesn't exist when, all right. So if we click on button, this comes up, and then if I click this one, it goes away. So you see when I hover over, the color a little bit change. Just be aware of that as well, because in the property of that rectangular, you do have all these styling here, like how you want the border be, and one of those things is hover fill. It's like when I hover in, what color you want it to be. So be aware of when you're designing your app, so you have all this styling. Any questions on this one? Let me see, I haven't looked at the chat yet. Okay. So I know we are over, but I'm just gonna, because I haven't talked about Power Automate yet. For that one also, you can access it from here, or you can just do flow.microsoft.com. I'm in Canada, so my network is a little slow. And then in here, this is the PowerApps portal. Right out of the bed, it tells you a little bit of templates that Microsoft built, and a lot of users been using that. It tells you the most used templates, and you can leverage these templates so you don't have to build from scratch. There's a lot of templates here for different reasons. If you want like approval, notification, and all that, and these are all about 445 different connectors. So I was way off. It was more than 220. It's about 445 connectors here, as you see. And then this action item here is that when you build an approval process, there's a connectors called approval. For that, when you use that approval connector, all your approvals can be seen from here. You can see all your approvals and review them, or anything that you receive, or anything that you sent out. You can see all of them here. This will give you a list of all your flows and what you're using. This part of it is this is your personal flows, means that the flows that you only have access, you can, in PowerApps and Power Automate, you can co-owner with someone to build an app together, or build a flow together. So in here, if you share something with someone else, you will see that under share with me. Desktop flows and business process, this is a bit different topic. Desktop flows is RPA, so robotic applications. We'll talk about that maybe in a different topic, but cloud and cloud flows is the one that you're probably mostly going to use. You can use desktop flows for if you wanted to integrate with legacy applications, you can do that. In here, you can click on new flow, and then you can select what type of flow you want. And Microsoft recently added a Visio template, means that you can build your flow in your Visio and import it here. Okay. Besides that, the create item again, bring the same menu here, like what type of flow you wanted to create, and all the templates. Templates bring the same ones, so same thing, just repeating. And then you can select like what purpose, what you want to do with your flow. You can select that topic, and it brings it. This is all the connectors are available. We saw about 440, and they keep adding it. So hopefully the BMC will come here. And this is where you can see all the, remember that when I said when you can add your connector, it will, when you're adding a connector, it will create a connections, which is you log in and your login will safely save in these connections. And then, so you can see some of them I need to fix them because my password was recently changed, so I have to fix them. So be aware of that. If your password keeps changing every 70 days or every 120 days or whatever, you wanted to be aware of that to check this area. When you changing your password, you want to make sure you come and you fix your connection. Otherwise, your flow will fail. Okay. In here, you can have a monitor of your flow, the activity. This is something that's recently been added. If your flow is failing and requires your attention, you can take a look at it here. One thing I forgot to show you here is if you click on your flow, it will show you a 28 days history of your flow, what happens, right? If it fails, you can take a look at it, you can go to it, and then you can see what's going on with that. Why is it failing? You can see all the steps of your flow and look at it, where is it failing? I can go to the next fail here and it tells me my flow failed in this action right here. I can drill down and find out why, which action and where it's happened, and then troubleshoot my flow. Where in the SharePoint workflow, as you know, you had to do log it to the workflow history in order to be troubleshooted. In here, you don't have to. You can just go to your history and look at it, what the step happens, and you can see why it happened. AI Builder is the same thing, the other one. I'm not going to go through this solutions and all that because we don't have time, but I'm just going to go ahead and create a new flow. Quickly, I'm just going to use automated here. I can go skip and takes me to here. For a flow, you need two things. First, you need your triggers. What happens to cause this flow to run, right? Is it manual, like manually triggering it, or is it when a SharePoint item is being added? I can use the SharePoint, and these are all the triggers for the SharePoint. When an item is created, I can use that. When an item is created, I want this flow to start be triggering. So I can go and use my demo and then bring my library. I use the document item. So I don't have a SharePoint list in there. That's why. Let me say when a file is created. There we go. So when a file is created, now I can use my demo site and my document library. And from there, in order to save your flow, you need an action as well. So one trigger, one action. In here, I can add an action. I can, if I wanted to, when item is here, approval, if I wanted to do an approval on my document library, I can search for approval and use the approval connector here, and I can create an approval. And again, if I don't have a connection, it will ask me to create one, but I had a connection and I started it. So in here, I can say what options I wanted to do. I can say everyone must approve, and then is bringing me here. What do you want the title be? Just like SharePoint workflow, you can select the values from your the selected item that is coming through. So when for this particular file that's been added, I can have the properties and bring it over to this connector here, this action itself. So for example, I wanted to say, want to bring the name. I can search here and it is uploaded, right? And waiting for your approval, right? I can do that. And then in here is also dynamic, so I can bring dynamic value here, or I can just type in hard-coded as well. I can bring the item links and all that. The links is here, so the link to the item. Oops, not there. This is not playing nice with me today. Here we go. All right, and then if I want to add description, I can add that. And this is the minimum what I need to save my flow. And then I can add a title here, document approval, for example. And then I can save it. Now, if I add the document, a file to my document library, this would trigger. So usually text is immediately, but sometimes could take up to 5 minutes to be triggered. Okay. So this is the flow. One thing you wanted to look at is there's a property here. You can go to the settings of it, and you have different options here. If this particular action, if it's failing, how many times you want to retry. The default is 4 times. You can say none, or you can have a fixed interval. You can change that, or if is this particular connector, if there's a problem with the source and their service is down, like how long you wanted to wait for this to time out. So be aware that a flow can only run for 30 days. So after 30 days, it would time out. So if you cannot put more longer than that, the duration. And then if you want to secure the output, when you secure the output, means that if you have sensitive data, when you go to the history, you can't see the output of that this particular action. One other thing I wanted to show you here for the triggers here is that if you go to the settings here, you can say only trigger this. You can add a condition. You can say only trigger this, right? If the status, for example, right, equals, I actually have to use equal like that, equal for submitted. So that way, single quotes. So Flow use single quotes, PowerApps use double quotes. Be aware of that. So you can get these formulas online if you don't know how to write these formulas. So I can say only trigger if these conditions met, right? Then that way it doesn't trigger for everything. You can do that. And the other thing I wanted to show you is you can use, you saw in the condition I use an expression. In here, you can also bring an expression to any of your there to, if you want to do it. Let's say if you wanted to say due date here, for example, due date, you can is 1 week from the modified date, right? You can click here and go to the expression and go to the date time, and you can say at days, right? And in here you can say the first parameter is that what's the date and how many days you wanted to add it, right? And then the date that I want to add is when is modified, for example, modified. So that brings it in there, and then comma and number of the days. So let's say 7 days. You only have 7 days to approve this item. So you can do that as well. Any question? I think we have one question in the chat. Okay, any questions regarding this?
Sorry, I guess I misinterpreted that 30-day. Are you suggesting that the workflow can't pause for more than 30 days?
Only up to 30 days. You can pause the flow up to 30 days.
So if I wanted to do an annual renewal, I couldn't.
You could. So good questions. So for that, you need to change your trigger. There's a trigger built in. So, and that is a schedule. So you can say reoccurrence, and you can say how often do you want this flow to run. So if you want to do annually, you can say to month and to 12 months, right? Every 12 months to run this. And then you can go and retrieve your SharePoint list or SharePoint items from here. So you can add an action, search for SharePoint, selecting that, and then in here you can just type search for get items. If you're looking for files, you can say let's search for file, and you can say get files property only, and then you can fill out.
Okay, I see, yeah. So you can say, you know, set reminder created plus 60.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Then you can,
Right.
yeah, you can do that. You can say in here instead of using the modify date, I can say in the expression, I can say add days, right? And I can say UTC now. That would get me the current date and time, and add 7 days to it, or whatever dates, how many days you want to do. So if you want to do annual basis, this is a schedule trigger is a good way to do it. And if we go to Microsoft guidance here, one of the things that is not available with Power Automate is site workflows, right? And you can use this reoccurrence trigger as a workaround for site workflows, and then you can follow by that, and you can say what information you want to get from your SharePoint and what you want to do. So in this example, I'm getting all the files in the document library. So and then you can click on advanced more, and you can filter if you know filter queries and OData filter queries, the REST API. You can use it here, or you can just do a quick Google search and you can find it. So I can say a status here equals submitted. Like I wanted to get all that, any documents, only those documents. I'm not interested in the other documents, only the ones that match this filter. And then I will add an action. So this gives me a list of files. So I can click on the control, then I can click on apply to each. So I want to go loop through all of those, right? And then I select in there what I need to pass a value. And this is the value, right, from the previous action. So all the values I'm getting from here, I want to go loop through it, and I can move this to here, and I want this to be send approval for all those files. So this, for example, this is the one I wanted to do, and I can now select the name. So now if this returns 10 items, this will go through 10 items and send the approval to this person 10 times for each of those files.
Thank you.
Any question? Someone asked me for DLP restricting in terms of administration. I wanted to make sure, I wanted to go over that as well, if you guys have some time. In here, you can, in Flow or PowerApps, there's a gear icon on top. You can click on it, and you click on Admin Center. If you're an admin of the Power Platform, you have that option. This will take you to the admin section. Which one thing I didn't talk about, environments. In what you can create different environments for different purpose. For one of the use cases that let's say you're working for a company that you have multiple different locations. You have companies, you have offices in Europe, you have offices in Asia and in US. Then you can create an environment for each of offices and set the region to that region, right? So That's one way of using environment. I've seen in a lot of companies using environments to use ALM process, again, application lifecycle management, which means you can have dev, QA, production, right? So they use that environment for that purpose. Or let's say you wanted to restrict the environment, all the environments that they cannot use certain connectors in there, but you want for IT department, you wanted to have a separate environment that is loosening up and they can use any connectors in there, right? You can do that as well. That's another scenario that you can use environments for. You can get an analytic of what's going on with your in your tenant, how your users using PowerAutomate and PowerApps. You can get that information here, like the run usage and all that stuff, what connectors they're using. Same thing for PowerApps, but I do want to talk about the data policy here. This is where you can create a policy to restrict the connectors, right? So if I can create a new policy here, demo, and then in here, let's say if I want all except these two, right, to be, by the way, you can't move everything to block. There are certain connectors that it has to be either in non-business or business. The non-business has this a little bit of an own restriction, but business has it removes all the restriction, so they can use it. Depending on what, if it's sensitive data, you wanted to bring it to business. If not, you can leave it in non-business. If you don't want them to use it, you can just say move it to block. So let's say I don't want them to use these connectors. I can move them to block, right? And one other thing is that, as you can see, there's a lot of connectors, and you wanted to make sure any new connectors comes up, they don't go to these buckets, right? You can set the default group. When a new connector comes, you can say the default should be block, so you can review it, and then once you review it and your security team review it and they approve it, then they can move it to either of these blocks. Okay, and then next we're going to move into the scope. We're going to say where do I want this policy to apply to all my environments, or I want it to certain ones, or I can say, you know what, all but exclude one or two. For example, I want this environment, the Center of Excellence environment, to be excluded from that. So I can select that. And let's move this one right. I think it's over here. I can select that. Let's see. Or select those two. So for example, these two, this policy will not apply to them because I said exclude those environments. Okay. And that way, if I create a new environment, this policy will apply to them, except these two. And I can review it and create that policy. And if your users goes to Flow and trying to use those connectors that is block, they can add it, but on the top they say they can't either save it, or if they save it, the flow will be disabled, so they can't use the flow. Any questions here?
So after all that work, they won't find out until the very end that they can't use it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let me remove all these policies. So I don't know what policy I built in there to demo that for you. Oh, that's my.
But don't get me wrong. I mean, it's good to do that so that they.
Yeah,
so
because
there's a gate they have to go through before they do any development to make sure that all the resources are available.
Exactly. Like, for example, I don't want anyone using Twitter, right? I don't want to use this to automate this process to send the company data and tweet them. right? Absolutely not. I don't want to do that. So I can block that and then go next. And I can say add it to all my environments. No one can use that. All right. So now if I go to my environment here, let's go and leave that. And then let's create a new work flow. Just going to manual trigger here. And let's search for Twitter. Let's do post tweet. There we go, finally. Test. Nothing here. I don't need that. And right away, I get a message here that this action violates your orgs data loss, or DLP policy, right? So it tells me right away, as soon as I add it, it says I cannot use it. So yes, you are right. If you're building a lot of actions and then you come to the connector that you're trying to add, they won't know it till then. So one way to do that is always advertise, build the center of excellence site that their users can leverage and they can get information there, like what policy, what connectors are available to me, what I can do, and all that sort of stuff. So you need to build that. And you need to communicate that with your users using Yammer or anything like that, or Teams. So when you're launching PowerApps and Flow, communicate that thing. So like, here's a link, go and review it. Here's the data, that the connectors that are available to you, and here's not. So they're aware of it. Otherwise, yes, you're right. If they build a very complex flow and then they add a connector that is blocked, then it's kind of wasted their time, right? So, but it will tell you right away in there, and I would be able to probably be able to save it. Yeah, actually I can't save it anymore. Before I used to be save it, but now we cannot save it. Any question?
I do have just one more.
Absolutely.
So we're set up on-prem. We've got our gateway established and tenant. We want to run we want to run Flow with our on-prem data to establish item level permission, because we can't do that currently with Designer, SharePoint Designer.
Good question.
Is that something we can do?
Absolutely. So I'm going to use it with the SharePoint Online, but there are some of actions here may not available with the SharePoint on-prem, but one of the connection here is permissions. Let me see if I can find it. There was one that I'm missing it somewhere. Oh, grant access. So in here you can specify item level. So
okay,
this is one way.
So we can trigger different access levels at an item level based on a status.
Yeah, you can do that.
Metadata.
Yeah, any metadata. You have to build your logic around it.
Yeah.
This is one way. Then go ahead.
Sorry, do you need to break the permissions before you grant the access on a new item?
This should do it. This should break the inheritance. But if you're not sure about any actions, you get this question mark right here. And this would take it, you can click on that link and it will explain what that action actually does, right? Right here, usually they're more restrictive. But I believe this will break the inheritance and then add it. So I believe it does that. So because that's how the SharePoint usually works when you're adding someone to an item level. If it's just a specific that item, because this is how it does it, it has to add it to that item because you're not saying it to add it to a site. So it had to break the inheritance in order to just add it for that item. So it does bring an inheritance. I do wanted to show you the other way. This is a little bit of more advanced. With the SharePoint, you also get HTTP requests, just like Workflow 2013 that you had that REST API request. You can do it here. This is a lot easier than Workflow 2013. If you know, there are some REST API that allows you to break the inheritance, remove the groups, you remove the groups and all that, and then add a new role. So you can use that REST API using this action here.
Okay.
This is sort of a new, I have not tested it, but this is where in the past I used for doing item level permissions.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, I just have one question. I see that this is being recorded. Are you guys going to send the link out to the emails provided? Or
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is this part of a series?
Yeah, we are hoping that we can have another series, and that's up to you guys. If you like, let me know what you want next to what you wanted to see next, and then CL and we can manage that, schedule one for later time to talk about that specific topic.
You hear that, Farahmand? You got some fans.
Absolutely, it's right up my alley. It's you know, I've been sort of anxious, or maybe even as far as stressed, as to what the next step is going to be beyond InfoPath, and it's a lot different. It's a lot vast. Scope is so much more. You know, it was just myself and another fellow that were handling all the you know, workflows through Designer 2013 and InfoPath 2013, but you can see this, you know, particularly when we're talking about different business levels and dropping them, as you illustrated a couple of minutes ago, different areas of business when you've got a global community within the same company, and having them, you know, segregated or separate and handled that way, it can get complicated.
Yeah, Ian, I don't know if it was you or Albert who asked about, you or Walter who asked about migrating the data over. You know, Farahmand mentioned tools like ShareGate.
Yeah.
But, you know, in terms of the poor man's tool, it's actually not that bad, because the data is actually just rows and columns. You know, they're XMLs, but they can be expressed as rows and columns.
Yeah.
And you just put it in data mode. You just put it in datasheet mode, copy the datasheet, and make sure you create the columns and fields in the cloud, and then create a view that can receive that in datasheet mode, and hit the magical Control V, and you've instantly pasted your data into 365. That's a very, you know, overly simplistic way of stating it.
PowerShell, Silo. You can do it with PowerShell even easier.
Yeah,
yes,
for sure.
You can do PowerShell. If I built, but a few years ago, I migrated one site like that to SharePoint Online and migrated from document library to SharePoint List. So I also built a little bit of a tool that does that. So it goes through the XML and grabs the data and moves it over to like Excel, and then from Excel you can move it. But one issue with that is that if there are some document library forms for InfoPath that the data only inside the XML and is not actually pushed to field or property into the document library. So I think that's your issue, right?
Yeah, it's going to be starting from scratch with a lot of this stuff. But you know, as I mentioned, we're going from 2010 to 2019. We're just shy of 365 because of some security questions. You know, some people didn't at the time when we started planning this whole negotiation. People said, "Well, you just can't do that leap. Don't do it. It's just too much." And we're sort of feeling the pain a little bit. We've got some other collaborative environments in 2013, and from 2010 to 2013, it's just not as much as the leap. And from 2013 to 2019, you know, we know we can see what our challenges are going to be there. But coming from 10 to 19, it's tough.
But don't forget also that this platform, it wasn't all that great maybe a year and a half ago. 2 years ago, it wasn't a complete tool. You would have been using it, you've been cursing. Like PowerApps and Flow they were missing a lot of business components that made it really hard. Now it's all there and more, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, to the Albert's
Do y'all need some help in migrating?
Well,
Ian, do you need help migrating?
Well, we're actually, we've moved all of our engineering stuff over. We're halfway done with our functional group stuff, and we're using ShareGate, and it's coming along. It's a little bit late now. We've already adapted everything, and it's already there. We're just validating a bunch of stuff now to make sure it's all good. But it was painful going. It was painful going. ShareGate, as you mentioned, it was helpful. It was an interesting tool.
You need help going?
I'm sorry?
No. When are y'all wanting to go to 365?
Well, that's not my backyard, but I would expect probably in the next 12 months.
If you need help, let me know. We do that quite a bit.
All right. I will.
And this is John.
Hi, John.
Hi. Yeah, so migration is kind of our specialty.
Okay. Okay. How do I get your contact information?
My information?
Yeah.
I guess you can email me. Email jobs@jecdev.com.
EVC?
JEC.
Yeah.
DEV as in developer.com.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you very much.
No, it's fine. The biggest problem is to go through the remediation of your data. In other words, making sure that people actually own data to get rid of all your rot, to make sure that things are migratable, per se. So you've already gone through that procedure to get to where you are now, so it should not be a bigger challenge to go forward.
Well, that was part of the problem too. We had customized 2010 so much that ShareGate didn't have a chance with some of it.
So also too, we do a lot of work in getting data, phrase it nicely, to uncustomize your work. And also, we also use other tools to make things easier for you.
Okay, thank you.
ShareGate's cool, but ShareGate works as on a client base. You have to be like a client access. Things like Quest.
Yeah, we did some database transfers as well when it was just so raw that it was our only chance, our only opportunity.
Yes. Yeah. This is cool. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'd like to see more of these. It'd be nice.
Yeah, Farahmand, you're a great communicator. You're smart. I mean, you're very experienced.
Say again, please.
It was unfair to ask you to do all of this in just one session. We definitely need you for 10 of these.
Yes.
Absolutely. There's a lot. There's a lot of, as Albert said, this platform is been maturing and has been adding a lot of new features. I see some of these new features being added that I heard before right in my demo. So yes, a couple of years ago, it was we had some headaches. We had to use some workaround to get around.
They're still updating monthly.
Yes, they're still updating. There's still some pain points, but it's getting there. I think it's getting to the point that is very useful and pointed that is or like it. But I think one area, let me know what you guys want to do for the next session. I can talk about the Center of Excellence and governance around Power Platform. If you want to get away from Power Platform, you want to go talk about SharePoint, Teams, and any other, let me know.
The biggest thing that we have, so the things that we do, we have pretty good experience with this, is that Teams, integration with Teams, because Teams is the biggest
This is also just
PowerPoint for us.
It's really great. There's a lot of cool stuff you can already do, but it's
Yes.
It's really in the infancy right now.
Yeah, so some of your users might want to be aware of all the new features that's coming out to be.
Yes.
On Teams.
Yeah.
As people are very new at this, they might be aware.
As I mentioned, it requires a lot of training and a lot of transparency with users. And this is a great platform, but you need to be aware of the licensing. Licensing can be a little bit of headache. You need to be aware of all the limitation that impose in this platform. Microsoft is introducing a 2,000 API calls per day, so you need to understand what that means.
The licensing is the biggest, to me, licensing is Microsoft's biggest new profit motive. I think that, they give you this little free version, but you pretty much have to pay for anything that's really worthwhile. And then when Cortex comes in, people are going to be paying through the nose. And these custom connectors are costing too much money for people.
It's not depending on the size of the organization, right?
Exactly. I mean, the cost depends on what you're trying to do,
Depends
John.
on your workload
Right?
and how much you want to get done.
Yeah, exactly.
It depends on what you want to do. How many hits? How large is your data? What if you use custom connectors? I mean, it's a whole litany of decision points. So I made a chart of all the different options to go and then how to try to beat the licensing scheme. But if you do anything that's kind of complex, you're going to be paying licensing, which is a bad deal.
Yes, John, it depends on what you're trying to do. I think this is good for the power users, and even for IT, depending on what you're trying to do, this is good platform. But if you take in something more advanced, is more enterprise-wide applications and all that, maybe you want to rethink building it on this platform. Maybe you want to take it to the Azure or Amazon or any other cloud. So depending on what you're trying to do, it is a great platform for your power users, for users that don't have knowledge of coding. It gives them ability to build applications for their department, for their team to leverage, or even for their personal use to be able to automate some of their daily tasks. But as Albert and John mentioned, is that if you are trying to build in complex applications, this might not be the platform.